we are back and ready to dive into our next Malzberg panel. Staying with us for this segment is Forbes contributor and Competitive Enterprise Institute fellow, Carrie Sheffield. And also joining us, Newsmax Deputy Financial Editor, our own Rob Williams. Welcome, everybody. So here's the first thing I want to get into with you guys. We're going to turn to a little bit of finance. We are coming off of some fantastic GDP numbers. 2 quarters, in fact, of really, really good numbers. And yet now we find out, I believe today, that the applications for unemployment are kind of moving up pretty heavily. How do those two go together, Rob?
Well, I was actually surprised GDP was so strong. I expected it to be much weaker than, not much weaker, but weaker than the print that we got of over 4%, I think it was. Yeah. I thought it would be revised downward at 3.4% because our exports had weakened and the dollar is very strong.
And yet, there it is. How do you explain how good it turned out?
Well, I think a combination of things are working in our favor. One is the collapse in oil prices, which is putting more money in people's pockets and increasing their spending power.
Carrie, it's got to be unusual to see that kind of good news in the guise of the GDP number, and then just a couple of days later, see a real boost. I think it's 133,000 applications for unemployment benefits. Do you have any explanation for that? Has this happened before? Is this something we should think is a really strange anomaly?
Well, I think it's interesting. You know, Senator Tom Coburn has done a lot of looking at disability fraud, basically, yes. Or just, we're starting to classify unemployment as disability, and we see that that creates a tandem or an increase in applications. So that could be part of it. I'm not sure. There's also another factor to consider, and just another figure, and that is the quit rate compared to a year ago has pretty much been pretty stagnant.
Is that potentially seasonal, or is that just something that's happening?
Well, I mean, September to September, so whatever seasonality would be comparable, but I think that's worrisome because when people have a higher quit rate, that means they feel more comfortable moving on to something else. So I think
so. They're feeling more confident that there are more jobs there for them to get, maybe.
It could be, yeah. I mean, it has ticked up a little bit.
That's an interesting take. That would actually be kind of good news, right, Rob?
Yeah, this number we got today, 313,000 claims, was more than people expected, but that number can bounce around quite a bit. So I don't read too much into it that it's necessarily a sign of doom and gloom, because if you look at the moving average over several weeks, it's still under 300,000, which is considered very good.
Right, and it is still less than it was a year ago. So.
And
yeah.
I'd be curious what your predictions are. Now that we've seen 2 incredibly strong quarters of economic growth, do we see a third? Carrie?
Everybody would want to know.
You're on tape, Carrie. We're gonna come back and double check this.
Well, I mean, you've got the holidays coming. I think Black Friday, I think we'll see strong activity there. I think it's shaping up to that. I think it depends on how the weather is. If we have a very harsh winter, that could slow economic activity. It could slow construction. So short is, I don't know, but I'm hopeful. And I think we do see a lot of activity in the last sort of holiday season, so I think it's shaping up to be a good quarter.
So Carrie gave us a beautiful segue into the next segment we want to talk about, which is Black Friday. The big day when it comes to shopping. Rob, are we gonna like it? Is the weather gonna mess it up? What's gonna happen Friday?
Well, yeah, the weather is very worrisome, but it may not suppress total sales because people could always go online and shop. Generally, the National Retail Federation expects sales to rise 4% this year from a year ago.
That's quite a bit, right?
It's very strong. Last year, they saw a rise of about 3% or more, and so they're looking at much stronger figures this year. I think a lot of it does have to do with gasoline prices falling throughout the country to below $3 a gallon, and that puts more money in people's pockets.
In the time we have left, I want a quick yes or no from either of you. Black Friday, hype or reality, Rob? I mean, haven't people figured it out that there's easier days to shop?
I'm not a big fan of Black Friday. I try to avoid it. I'd rather stay at home and buy online. So,
Carrie, hype or reality, Carrie?
Well, you can get a lot of deals online from the comfort of your home, so...
Yeah, you don't really need to go out there and put up with all that nonsense, right?
Yeah, so I think it's worth it. I think if you can get some good deals, it's worth it.
So I want to thank Carrie for coming in, Forbes contributor, fellow at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. Our own Newsmax deputy financial editor, Rob Williams, is going to stick with us for the next segment. We're going to talk the day's market wrap-up. It should be interesting. Coming up next, how did the markets do today? As I just said, Rob's going to stick around with us after the break. He's going to let us know how it went. We'll be right back with you.